I'm Jeff Pospisil, the 10-Minute Treasurer with practical advice for improving your church's financial future. So in this video, I'm going to do something a little different than normal. I want to talk about why I do this. So why do I put out these videos? Why do I put out extra resources? I just finished reading this book, Starting with Why by Simon Sinek, and I'll put a link to that book in the description. But he talks about how if you remember why you do something, you remember your why, that will inspire you. Um, to do whatever it takes to succeed. That's one of the key things. And sadly, I work with so many churches that forgot why they exist. They don't remember their purpose. So, and you could see that instead of people being inspired to join in the work, they end up having to manipulate people. And it's a great book. I encourage you to read it. But anyway, this is why I do this. So part of why I do this relates to my own backstory, and it's really not tragic, but it left an impression on me. You see, I was really young when I became the treasurer for Bismarck First United Methodist Church. And because I was a CPA and because I was a government auditor, they assumed that I would know everything there is about keeping the books for a church. And while I knew what it should look like, the books, I'd never actually had to keep the books for anybody yet besides my own self personally. So I go in there and I remember the first time I have to cut payroll, I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never cut a payroll before. And what is up with the pastor's taxes? What am I going to do? So I happened to there was a United Methodist Church actually just a few blocks away, and I called up that treasurer and she walked me through it. And I thought, what would I do if there wasn't a treasurer nearby that would have helped me? I mean, I would have been screwed on month one. So I just hated that idea that I felt like I was out on my own, and that luckily I had one person that was a lifeline that was able to help me. And I thought, man, this is such a kind of a lonely and isolated job. So that built it into me that there was an issue. There was a loneliness and an isolation to being a church treasurer. So 4 years later, I ended up being hired as the conference treasurer for the Dakotas United Methodist Church. And that just meant that I was the head accountant for the United Methodist in North and South Dakota. That also meant I got to move to Mitchell, South Dakota, the home of the world's only corn palace. So, and I still live there today, but it opened my eyes to the scope of the problem because what I felt at Bismarck First, I was so fortunate because I felt that isolation and loneliness, but I had another church treasurer that was United Methodist not that far away from me. And there was over 250 United Methodist churches at the time there, and most of them didn't have anybody else in their community that was a United Methodist Church treasurer. So they were really, really isolated. And I thought, oh my goodness, how would I have felt um, if I didn't have somebody I could go to? If I didn't know there was somebody that I could reach out to. I certainly would have either given up or failed, or at least I wouldn't have done as well as I did do. So early on in my position, I felt this responsibility for those church treasures that if I could somehow be a lifeline for those that are struggling, that they would have somebody to call, somebody to visit with, somebody to email to work through something they're struggling with, maybe provide a resource online that they can go to and would help them out. That was my hope, that they wouldn't feel like they were in it all by themselves. And but then that bumps into my limitation. You know, I'm an introvert at heart, like a lot of accountants. I'm an introvert. And so the more I help people, the more calls I got, the more visits I got, the more emails I got, the more I really wanted to break from people because while I enjoy people, it takes a lot of energy for me. So you'll notice, especially around if you already know me, around annual conference time, I'm going to be a little harder to get a hold of. And I'm busier probably, but I'm also kind of avoiding people. And sorry about that, but it just takes me a little bit to recover and recoup and build up my reserves so that I can help. But that was really the struggle. Is I knew one person couldn't do it. Probably four people couldn't do all the work that needs to be done. So what was I going to do? And knowing these limitations and accepting them, that's why I developed this YouTube channel as well as the related blog, is that I knew that for every one church treasurer that was able to connect with me, um, there was likely many with the exact same struggle, the exact same issue that didn't know there was a lifeline, or maybe they weren't able to connect with me, or maybe there was a brand new church treasurer that just needed something to help them get going, to know that they weren't alone. And so that's why I developed this. And again, this isn't only my ideas, by the way. Most of the ideas I actually borrow from the church treasurers that I'm working with. We have some people with some great ideas, and I just like to share them with other people as well, because the church treasurer position in my mind is the second most important position in any church. So I want you to hear that again. The church treasurer position is likely the second most important position in any church. I think the pastor's position is probably the most important, but if a church treasurer doesn't do their job well, that will just paralyze ministry. So if a church treasurer is well supported, able to do their job well, um, and honestly, they need to be spiritually engaged as well. That will be a huge benefit for the church. So if this resonated with you, and if you want to help other church treasurers, I encourage you to share this, to subscribe, to like, comment, whatever it is to help other church treasurers. And again, this is a ministry of the Finance Office of the Dakotas UMC, as well as the Dakotas United Methodist Foundation. All right. God bless you.